greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist.
Hey everybody, it's Rev129 coming back at you. Tonight I'm going to be talking about HIV and virus testing scams. I got my last sermon taken down from YouTube. Just got a generic letter that it was dangerous. Of course, you can have, smoking in videos and talk about Planned Parenthood and what to do to get an abortion and all kinds of other things that are killing many more people, and that's not dangerous, but talking about the truth and biblical truth, that's really dangerous. It's definitely dangerous to a world that Satan is running. So I'm trying to be careful with the titles of my videos. So I'm going to call it the Corny virus because I think it's corny. And today I'm going to be talking about HIV and virus testing scams. Now, just wanted to say a little something about myself. I am a part-time pastor, and I am also working in an IT department. And I did travel to Antarctica last year. I plan to do a video on that. I just haven't gotten to it yet. The coolest part was probably the pictures like this, seeing it from the plane and seeing the ice shelf. I will get into that then. What I saw when I was down there, what I didn't see. And yes, after traveling there, I still believe in the flat earth. So I do plan on doing a video on that. Just wanted to give a little teaser there of some of the pictures that I took. Getting back to the subject, lest Satan should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices. 2 Corinthians 2:11. So it's important, and so many Christians I talk to today and deal with, they just don't care. They just want to stick their head in the sand. They like being ignorant. It's kind of like they don't want to come out of the matrix. Even if you tell them, hey, you're being lied to about everything, well, it doesn't really matter to me. I like my life. Certainly, it's not all that bad. Or especially with the older generation, like the baby boomers, it's always like, well, things were better back in my day. And the government was honest, and people were honest, and of course they didn't fake the moon landings. I saw it on television. The same stuff, and they're not really going by the Bible. I mean, that's point blank. I get arguments all the time, but the funny thing is, usually the arguments include 0 Bible verses. It's just, we know this is true, or I believe this is true because I saw it, or I just think it looks pretty. Something crazy like that. But the Bible's pretty clear that we are not to be ignorant of Satan's devices, and we are to be studying the scriptures daily like the Bereans and learning and exposing evil whenever we can. And that's what I'm trying to do with my videos. Again, with this corny virus, this 33 keeps showing up over and over again, and this is just to show you a couple of these that popped up. And this is just a sign. Yes, of course, again, 33 could show up once in a while, but the amount of times it shows up, there's no way that that's a coincidence. And if you want to believe it's a coincidence, hey, go with it. I'm not going to stop you. But to me, this is just a way of them. They're basically laughing at us, is what I think. And they're seeing how far they can take this how far they can control us. Now they want to close all the churches. And, the thing is, the people that believe it, you're not going to convince them that it's safe to go out, that it's safe to do anything. And that's not what I'm trying to do. You do whatever you think is safe. What I'm just trying to do is get people to think. So I'm not telling anybody what to do. But I'm trying to make you think and not be controlled by a satanic world system that really ultimately can care less if you die. I mean, that's just the truth of the system we live in. William Casey, CIA director, will know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false. So, you can read these quotes all day, but do you believe it? Because I'll tell people this type of stuff all day and they'll say, oh, that's horrible, yet they still believe everything they see on the news, everything that they see on TV, and it's just almost impossible to wake them up. Adolf Hitler said, if you tell a lie long enough, loud enough, and it often enough, the people will believe it. And that's what they're doing with this corny virus. They keep every day coming on saying, oh, it's going to be so much worse than you think, and it's going to be an epidemic, and you better prepare. And that's why people bought all this toilet paper. If you went out and bought a ton of toilet paper, you're an idiot. I'm just being honest. There's no reason to buy up a ton of toilet paper. That's not even the first of my worries, even if there was going to be a world-ending epidemic. And I don't think this is that. I think this is more of a test, more of a see how far they can take it. But of course, I don't know for sure, but I know the one who does know, and he left us his word so that we would not be ignorant also. Hitler also said people are more likely to believe a big lie than a small one. So, I often get, how could everyone be in on this? How could such a big lie, how could they do it? Well, obviously not everyone's in on it. This one's really not that hard because basically anyone who has a cold or the flu, they can say has the corny virus, and, what are you going to do? Most people live through it. So many people supposedly die. I don't even believe there's anybody dying from this virus, but that's just my personal opinion. I don't want to upset anyone. I'm not saying they wouldn't kill people just to make a hoax seem true, but it's just my personal opinion. And that's why I'm Rev 12:9. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. And we as Christians especially better start getting it in our heads that Satan's goal is to deceive the whole world. And yes, that includes America. Sorry to inform you. That also means people in America. Because, again, most Christians think, well, that's not me. That's somebody else. So what about this corny virus? Is it a pandemic? Well, I did a little bit of research. I wanted to see, I wanted to get more familiar with what's a virus. And I'll tell you why in a second. A virus, according to Wikipedia, is a biological agent that reproduces inside the cells of living hosts. When infected by a virus, the host cell is forced to produce thousands of identical copies of the original virus at an extraordinary rate. So the reason I really wanted to learn more about a virus, and I'm certainly not an expert in this area, is what I noticed from researching things is every time I looked up a virus, I felt like I was looking up satellites with the topic of the flat earth. And I'm seeing all these very nice cartoon pictures. I mean, these are really cool pictures, but I'm not seeing a lot of pictures that make me think they really know what a virus looks like. Well, I'm not saying they don't. Sure, I'll get a bunch of trolls commenting in here. What I'm saying is, it seems like they're not all that sure. And then there's things like retrovirus. Well, what is a retrovirus? Well, Viruses do not have full instructions for producing proteins from DNA, RNA, so they are dependent on the translational chemistry of the host cell. Retroviruses are viruses, so very important. A retrovirus is a virus with a particular mechanism of replicating. Retroviruses have an RNA genome, but not all RNA viruses are retroviruses. Now, this is important because I was trying to see if the Corny virus was a retrovirus, but I couldn't find any information on that. It is an RNA virus, according to the information, but I did not see that it was a retrovirus. And it's interesting because we have, like viruses, retroviruses cannot replicate on their own, meaning they have to invade a host cell to complete their life cycle. Unlike a virus, a retrovirus inserts its genome into its host genome. And we'll see why that's important in a minute. But if the Corny virus is not a retrovirus, then it wouldn't seemingly be able to insert its genome into the host genome. Anyways, I'll show you what that all means in a minute. So we have these retroviruses like the Ebola virus, which, again, I don't think this is a real virus. I don't know if you ever saw the movie Outbreak back in the 90s, but, whatever their African Mojave virus or whatever it was called was. It's funny how similar it looked to this Ebola virus. And again, we get cartoons. As you can see, these all look like the same thing, just putting different colors on it and things like that. So again, I'm not a virus expert, but I'm just telling you what I observed. You can go out, Google it yourself, see what you find. Here's the HIV virus. Looks an awful lot like the Corny virus, and there's even less pictures of the HIV virus. We'll get to that in a minute. But again, just showing you, these are really cool pictures, but, I'm not know if that's really what it looks like. So now let's get to the testing. This is what I found interesting. What to expect when you get a Corny virus test. Stay calm, don't wiggle. It will just take 10 seconds. Now, they're making it sound like it's real expensive to do this, and I'm going to call horse manure on that. I do not think that's true. Labs are set up all over the place to get blood tests. Like when I went to Antarctica, you have to get a ton of tests done to be able to go there. I'll talk about that in that video. And why they're doing the tests they're doing, which let's look at that. Start at the top. If the patient is calm, the swabbing takes a mere 10 seconds or so and is not painful. A jittery patient can make things more difficult. It's like they're reading to kindergartners. I mean, seriously. Once the sample is taken, it is put into a sterile container and sent to a lab, where a chemical is used to pull the cells off the swab and turn the sample into a liquid form. That liquid is then put into a machine that goes through hot and cold cycles to make multiple copies of the virus RNA, which carries genetic information. So this is again where it's an RNA virus, but if it's not a retrovirus, then would it be copying this into the genome of the cell? But anyways, let's keep looking. The machine looks to match person's RNA with the coronavirus RNA. It's determined negative or positive. Now, here's what I found interesting. This test is extremely accurate and can detect even low levels of the virus. False positives are highly unlikely, he said, though false negatives may result from poor quality swabs or if the instrument is blocked by mucus. Those factors might have been at play in a number of false negatives initially reported. Patients who continue to have symptoms after a negative test are advised to get retested. Now, here's the problem. So basically what they're saying is If you still have signs and you've been tested negative, you should go back and get retested. Which, again, I find this questionable because you have Trump getting tested, and he was negative, and he was showing no signs. And so, basically, if you get tested and you're negative, but then you get sick, then they're trying to create more fear. You should worry again and go back and get retested. And if this test is causing a lot of false negatives, then why wouldn't you do a different type of test? And we'll look at that here in a second. So I looked up, the types of viral tests that they do because I was trying to figure this out. And I'm going to show you how this connects to HIV in a minute. But when I was taking a look at this, I found it interesting that they do 4 basic types of tests. You have the antibody test, the viral antigen detection test, the viral culture, and the viral DNA or RNA detection test. So it sounds like the Corny virus is doing the last one there, the viral DNA or RNA, but it's interesting because this test can show the exact virus causing an infection, which kind of implies that you would do this test when you're seeing full-blown causes of sickness or infections from the virus. So again, these people that are getting tested that are showing no signs, are they really finding anything? And again, this looks like it's usually a tissue or blood or other fluid such as spinal fluid. So I'm not sure just wiping a swab in your nose is really going to get accurate for this test. Why aren't they doing a blood test? So those are the tests that we're looking at. And now I want to talk about as it's related to HIV or AIDS. Because there's a couple interesting things. I want you to think about this. We're going to talk about vaccines at the end of this. But, if HIV is a virus, then why haven't they come up with a vaccine yet? The same with Ebola. Why isn't there an Ebola vaccine? There's a simple reason in the case of the AIDS, and that's because the AIDS virus is a scam. I'm not saying that there isn't something that was killing homosexual men or sodomites, but it's not whatever they think it is. And when I was a kid, the HIV scare, when I was a teenager, it was like, they made it seem in the 80s like it was going to be worldwide. I remember hearing figures like 30% of the world's population would have HIV by the year 2000. And all this craziness. And what happened? What happened to this? In fact, now you have Magic Johnson walking around like he's healed. And you have all these people that supposedly were HIV positive that are still alive. And many of them now are saying, oh, I'm healed from this. And nothing's going to happen to them. And, the truth is, and I'm going to leave a link. We're going to watch a video clip. The truth is, if it was really a virus, it should have jumped from the homosexual crowd to the regular population. And they say it jumped in Africa, and we're going to see the explanation for that, the heterosexual. But really, it never did. It always stayed with the same population, which just goes to show it's not a virus or whatever it is. So the way they test for this is the Western blot test. And this test, along with ELISA, are combined to be 99.9% accurate. And I mean, the fact that they would print something like that's a bold-faced lie is just ridiculous. Now, this blot test, first of all, the original test is only checking like 1 or 2 proteins. Now, the blot test checks like 10 proteins, and it's looking for antibodies. And here's a couple examples of what they look like. And basically, if you have so many of these proteins, then you are considered HIV positive, and basically you're given a death sentence at that point. However, as you're going to see from the short video clip, it's not really quite as they make it seem.
Now, the Western blot is considered the more specific of the two tests because it uses 10 proteins to detect antibodies, whereas the ELISAs conventionally use 2 or 3. Western blot uses 10. You can get a positive Western blot in Africa that would not be considered positive in Australia. So we're in a situation where even on the most specific test, it matters what country you got tested in. So is this absurd?
I have a chart here that will show you that one of the best ways to change from positive to negative is simply to change your residence to a different country. This was published in Continuum magazine from London. It was made up by Val Turner, a scientist in Australia who's done a lot of work on HIV antibody tests. And he has pointed out that there are different criteria for reading these tests. And each one of these columns shows the different criteria from different countries or places. Now, as you can see, going from one column to the next, there are different criteria. Without looking real closely, you can see it's pretty obvious. In Africa, all you need is 2 of these bands to be positive. In Australia, you need 4. In the United States, we have 5 different sets of criteria for reading Western blots, and they are all totally different. So if you go to a lab that uses the American Red Cross criteria, you may be positive. And if you go to a lab that uses the FDA criteria, you may be negative. And if you go to a lab that uses the CDC criteria, you will more likely be positive there because they use much more lax criteria. Now, this is totally ridiculous. How can you say that somebody is infected with HIV or not, depending on whether they live in the United States or in Australia? It's totally absurd.
What are the different antigens and antibodies and conditions will cause a false positive reading?
Well, like I said, we have hepatitis B, and we have herpes simplex, which is a very common condition. There must be millions of people in the United States infected with that. And flu or a flu vaccination will do it, and even the common cold. Now, this would be a very rare chance that that would happen, but it is a possibility. And in countries like Africa, where it's supposed to be riddled with AIDS, or in Southeast Asia or India, where we are supposed to have these new up-and-coming heterosexual AIDS epidemics, what's really happening there is that there are such huge amounts of endemic tuberculosis and malaria and hepatitis B, and all of those things cross-react on the tests, that's what's happening. And flu or a flu vaccination will do it, and even the common cold.
And flu or a flu vaccination will do it, and even the common cold.
So now, the amazing thing about this clip, well, there's a couple things. One, you see that this test is a joke. Not only is the fact that AIDS is caused by HIV a joke, and HIV being a real virus to me at this point is probably a joke, but also the testing is a joke because it depends on what state you're in. What I really thought was interesting when I revisited this, considering this Corny virus, was that the flu or flu vaccine or even the common cold could cause a false positive. And call me crazy, but I have a feeling that this Corny virus test is pretty much the same. And this would explain why people that just had the flu or flu vaccine or a common cold even might show up as positive on this test. And then, of course, they believe they have it and they're quarantined. The power of persuasion. If you're told you're really sick, you start to feel sicker than you maybe are. And everybody's seen that playing out. On the other hand, if you have a positive attitude, then you can sometimes act better than you really are. So it all depends. But I just wanted to share this because, one, you should watch this documentary. It's not a Christian documentary, so, but I think it's very educational as far as understanding what's going on. I don't necessarily agree with the whole point behind this documentary, but it's definitely interesting. And I still believe AIDS is a punishment from God from Romans 1, which actually is more credible than the story that we're given. So what is the point of all this? Well, unlike HIV and Ebola, it appears that we already have a vaccine test, and we already have people volunteering for the first dose. So, I don't know how long they're supposed to normally test a vaccine before they start doing human trials, but apparently we're skipping that because we're already doing the human trials. And all these people are made out to be heroes. What a hero. He wants to save the world by getting this vaccine. Superman. And the funny thing is, I just did a video on Hollywood and the Corny virus, and you can see that this Contagion movie followed the exact same storyline where, of course, the truthers were the bad guys, and the people that didn't want to go along with the government were the bad guys, and the person that created the vaccine was the hero of the world, and she tested on herself just so we could get this vaccine sooner, and there were lines waiting to get this vaccine. And of course, the CDC and FDA and WHO in the movie are all the really good guys, and pharmaceutical too, because they're manufacturing this vaccine as fast as they can so that they can save people. And the truthers and the people that have any doubts, they're the evil ones, which is exactly what the government is doing now. I mean, if you're anti-vaccine, you're going to be enemy number one pretty soon, especially when this vaccine hits the market, and everyone that cares about the safety of others is going to go get it, knowing that it hasn't been tested at all, even if the premise of vaccines worked. And of course, if they work, then you shouldn't care about the people that don't get vaccine. If you want to get it, go ahead and get it. I'm not getting it. Again, 1 Corinthians 3:19, for the wisdom of this world is foolishness with God. For it is written, he taketh the wise in their own craftiness. It's pretty obvious that a lot of the things in the world are mocking God. The Bible in Exodus and Leviticus talks about how to deal with a sickness. And basically what we're doing today is what the Bible teaches. Because the Bible teaches to quarantine. The Bible teaches to wash your hands, actually. The Bible teaches to wash even your clothes and to stay out of your house when you're being quarantined. So all the things that we do today, God taught 3,000 years ago. So it's amazing that the things that God taught 3,000 years ago is still really what works when there is a real sickness. And I'm not saying there's never real sicknesses, because there certainly are. But again, if you follow the biblical plan and the wisdom of God, then you'll do fine. If you follow the wisdom of this world, then you're going to be living in fear and fear-mongering and stacking, toilet paper in your basement, thinking that that's going to save you somehow. I still haven't figured that one out. That was proof to me that this was all fake hoax that was engineered, that they could make toilet paper go off the shelves. It's crazy. Mark Twain said it's easier to fool people than to convince them they've been fooled. And boy, was he right. It is so hard to get people to listen, so hard to get people to think outside the box. Again, I'm not telling anybody what to do. You got to make your own decisions. What I know is I'm going to trust in the Lord. Jesus walked up and touched lepers all the time. And I'm not saying go touch sick people, but I'm just saying I'm not going to live in fear. I know where I'm headed. I know where I'm going after this world. And that's what's most important to me, and helping other people get there too. That's why I do what I do. 2 Corinthians 4:4, in whom the God of this world hath blinded the minds of them which believe not, lest the light of the glorious gospel of Christ, who is the image of God, should shine upon them. So let me just say this. If you don't have Christ in your life, then now's the time to do it. I'm not making any predictions on how much longer we have, but what I do know is it's never too soon to accept Christ as your Lord and Savior. So have a good night, and God bless you wherever you are. And if you like the video, give me a thumbs up. Thinking about doing a live cast to talk about my trip to Antarctica, so let me know in the comments what you guys think about that. God bless again. Talk to you later.